Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to On the Bright Line podcast, Tales from Recovering Food Addicts from the perspective of a physician, a therapist, and an off-the-wall storyteller. We are not affiliated or endorsed by Brightline Eating, and all content presented in this podcast represents our personal opinions and does not represent medical, nutritional, or psychological professional advice. Hello, on this episode, we are going to be talking about habit stacks. So a little background on habit stacks. This is basically, for a long time, it was a mystery to me. I was like, what the heck is a habit stack? But habit stacks are basically the list of habits that you do. Oh, and there's Sprinkles. Sprinkles is our mascot dog. She is a 87-year-old bulldog.
And she just said, get off my lawn.
Back to habit stack. Sorry. Sprinkles wanted to go outside, so she's being let outside. So habit stacks are basically a list of habits that you do. I have a morning habit stack. I have an evening habit stack. I even have an afternoon habit stack, which is kind of a cheater habit stack. But this is something that I did not necessarily institute at the very beginning of my program, which is interesting to talk about because it's definitely something that's taught to institute very early in your program. But I felt, this is a conversation I just had with a buddy actually, I felt like I couldn't add one more thing on top of learning how to feed myself.
Right. You were already juggling so many plates.
It was, and just learning how to feed myself and eat and do the food part of the program was enough for me that I didn't feel like I needed to institute the habit stacks. But now that I have automaticity, which is a buzzword in the community, automaticity around my food, in so much as I don't really think about my food all that much anymore, which is wonderful. I feel like now was the time in the past, month-ish, 2 months, I've been focusing on solidifying my habit stack, making it part of my life routine, and figuring out how to fit it in. So
do we want to define automaticity for people that might not be familiar with that word?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Bonny.
Tag. Automaticity means that things are happening automatically. And so Susan Pierce Thompson in the Bright Line Eating program and book, I believe, describes it like you brush your teeth twice a day, or most of us do. And so it's just something you've been doing so long that you don't think about, I have to get up now and go brush my teeth. You just get up to start your day and brush your teeth. It just happens automatically, automaticity. So we like to have automaticity with our food. So if we're writing our meals down the night before, we're planning everything out. Just when it finally comes time to eat, what you're doing with your food is automatic. You don't have to stop and think about it, plan it, and then that eliminates a lot of opportunity for failure, right?
So eliminates that decision fatigue.
Exactly.
Make another decision, another choice.
And the risk of, just deciding you're going to make an off-plan choice, right? But automaticity also comes along with the habit stack. So the more you do something repetitively and practice it, the more automatic it becomes, like brushing your teeth. And so adding in things to your morning, afternoon, or evening that help you be emotionally healthier, physically healthier, more at peace, all those things help you as a person, but also help you with the Bright Line Eating program. And Robin, you can talk to the psychological part of habits, becoming automatic.
Oh, so, and I know in the Bright Line book, she talks a lot about that the average, right? It takes an average of 66 days to start a habit. And I think there's so much literature out there that says, do it for 3 weeks and you'll have a habit. And so I think it is really important to say, actually, it's an average of 66 days. And for some people or things, it's going to be longer. For some people or things, that may be shorter, because I think that could be really detrimental for people who go, well, but I've done it for the textbook 3 weeks. And it's actually a lot longer than that. And I love that language of habit stacking, right? In a lot of the literature, they'll talk about linking, right? And that we want to link one habit to another so that I go from A to B to C every single time. And whether you want to call that, a habit stack or linking or a ritual, whatever, language works. But in the BLE community, it's a habit stack.
Yeah.
And I think creating the habits too requires making a plan, because at first it's not going to feel automatic. It's going to feel like
Awkward.
a pain in the booty. It's going to feel like extra time you're spending doing something. And she also talks about, Susan Pierce Thompson talks about something early in the book about, who you are and who you perceive yourself to be is based on what you see yourself doing. Right? And so once you begin to see yourself every day doing meditation, doing exercise, doing meal preparation, once you start to see yourself doing those things, you start to see yourself as someone who does those things. And that also builds on that.
So I am a person who.
I am a person who does not eat sugar and flour. I am a person who preps my food at night. I'm a person who does my meditation, right?
But I think it's also coming upon the automaticity of some things before you can build in that next habit. Because I think had you said to me, Meagan, when you first started this program, you were going to be a person that meditates every morning, I would have been like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And my rebel part, talking about, my internal family systems, my rebel part would have said, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So, and pushed against that very ferociously. And I did. It was really interesting because talking about how to form a habit, and that sort of thing, I would commit every week to my mastermind group. I'm going to meditate this week. I'm going to do it every morning. I commit to you, even just 2-3 minutes. And I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I mean, I scroll on social media for a lot longer, but I wouldn't commit 2 to 3 minutes a day to just to stop, breathe, center, whatever. And then it took going to another level of accountability, which I started posting it to my Instagram stories. And that's how I got my automaticity. And I don't know that I would say it's definitely automatic yet. I think I'm still working on that, but I'm building that habit. And it is like flexing a muscle. It's really interesting because it's the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more automatic it comes, but it takes that time, like you said.
Do you think that it also took you having some repetition to see the value, to increase your buy-in to that habit?
Yes.
Yeah. And buy-in, right? So it's about what's the payoff and the buy-in, and how do we reduce the barriers to entry, right? If the barrier of entry is too high, and like you were talking about in the beginning, that barrier of entry was too high. You didn't have the bandwidth quite yet to give to that. And then once other things became more automatic, it sounds like your buy-in, your willingness to go, okay, I've got a little more bandwidth. And then you did it a few times and this actually feels good. How did you feel once you had been meditating for
for sure. I
so?
definitely felt more centered and more calm.
Yeah.
And just having the moments, and I meditate in the morning. So just having those moments of peace and quiet, was really, I think, what I was missing, and I just didn't realize I was missing it until I started doing it, because I would get up and I would get going and not take any time for myself really, other than, maybe to make a cup of coffee and make my breakfast, but that was it. And I think that having the automaticity, especially in the morning, because, my funny story is that I wrote down a breakfast that was not my normal breakfast in my food journal the night before. And then I ended up making my normal breakfast because that's how automatic my breakfast was.
Right.
I was like, oh shoot, I forgot I wrote down that other breakfast because I said I bought raspberries at the farmer's market. So I was like, I'll make raspberries instead of blueberries. Well, I made blueberries because I make blueberries every morning, and that's what I thought I was going to do. Yeah. So I think, but having that automaticity around my breakfast is I don't have to put any brain effort towards breakfast and towards what I do in the morning, as long as all the pieces are there, which that's also obviously part of habit stacking, is making sure you're doing your grocery shopping and that you've got everything you need. But if all the pieces are there, I don't have to think about it at all. And so that definitely freed up the space to do something, like you said, that I didn't think I had the bandwidth for previously. But now I'm I can't imagine not having.
Well, and I want to talk specifically about the habit of meditation, because I think if you're going to add something in while you begin this program, it really could be the first thing you add, because it makes you feel so good. And I But I think the biggest barrier, in addition to just deciding you're going to take time for it, however many minutes, and Robin mentioned on a previous episode of our podcast, the Insight Timer.
Yeah.
That's a free meditation app. It has hundreds or thousands of different guided meditations, and you can search by times. You can just put in how many minutes.
Right.
I have 5 minutes. You can put in 5 minutes, and you're going to do a 5-minute meditation. But in addition to just making the time for it, it's deciding the space. I mean, I think, I'm like, oh, my dog's always up in the morning. My family always needs something from me that's going to be so disruptive. Or just deciding you can't take that time away from, well, our normal thing we do is we lay in bed and scroll on our phones together or whatever, right? And I would have to get up and go to a separate place and be by myself. And I love that Meagan has been posting her meditations recently for her accountability. And I love that on one of them, her little toddler came in the room and interrupted her. And it's like she just smiles and giggles and she just kind of kept going. And I just love that because that's real life. And some people are like, oh, if I can't be at a Zen retreat center, on a yoga mat in complete peace and silence, this is never going to work. And it's like, that's not what meditation needs to be. It's just about it's quieting yourself, breathing, and relaxing your mind. And it doesn't have to be that complex. And you're not supposed to, you don't need to reach nirvana in a 5-minute meditation, right?
Yeah.
Well, and so I think it's a human thing, right? To just make peace with the fact that you're going to get interrupted by kids or animals or the phone or something,
And I think the other thing to think about is like from a spiritual aspect, like meditation is like you can make meditation whatever you want it to be, right? So like if you pray, like it can be a 10-minute time of prayer or whatever the case might be. It doesn't have to necessarily be like, alming yourself, into nirvana. It can be other things as well, but it's just a time of what I like, the way I like to think of it is just breathing exercises and a time of like centering and just quieting my mind, because I think the reality is that being a person, that has come from trauma in my life, like it is hard sometimes just to be quiet and peaceful in my own body, and I know Robin can talk about that more than I can from a psychological perspective, but I just know that is hard sometimes to just like be in the skin and be quiet,
to sit and be present. And I think we're going to do like a whole podcast about meditation, the different meditations. I'm going to get a few kind of quick short meditations recorded and posted on my page. And because I think it is such a struggle, and everyone hears, oh, it's this great thing and I should add it to my habit stack, but there's all these different levels of discomfort with doing meditation, or what it should or shouldn't be, or how do I justify adding that into my time. And I think that's another piece about the habit stacks, is being willing to say, I am worth making this time for myself. And I think specifically, we're 3 women sitting in the room here, and I think as women, we can really struggle to take time to do things for ourselves, because we are so busy, giving to the family, creating this home, and I think we have to be willing to, it's that you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first, and if you don't put the work into developing your habit stacks so that you are healthy and happy, then you're pouring out and you're giving too much of yourself.
Yep. And other habits that you can add into your stack. We can all brainstorm here. A few I think that are great or good for some people. Exercise. They talk in the program, and I firmly agree. You should not try to exercise at the beginning of BLE.
Right.
You got to focus.
I will interject. You shouldn't exercise until you want to, because I think that until you have the desire, until the automaticity is around the food and around everything else, pushing yourself into exercise to me sometimes feels like a pitfall of this of people in the program, is that they try and exercise too quickly. And so I just wanted to interject
or
that.
to try to lose weight, which I also don't think is absolutely not the way to do it. It should just be because it starts to feel good. Exercise can be just, I'm going to start a stretching program because my muscles are tight.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to walk more. I'm going to hike. Right. I'm going to, I'm going to add those things in. Journaling. Making accountability calls can be in the habit stack. Just literally making time to get on Facebook and acknowledge. Every morning I'm going to get on and acknowledge 3 people's I'm going to make a comment on 3 people's posts for support, to provide support. Those are all things that you can do. And what are other things, Meagan?
Like mine midday or like work on a project, because I do a lot of side stuff. So that's always my midday, is to, work on a project, whatever that project is I'm working on, whether that's, posting on one of the social medias that I work on, or, working on some kind of design, because I do design as well. Just that's taking time away for that, which is not like work, quote unquote, because I do have a full-time job, but it's just, sometimes it's a moment of like zen and creativity, and just finding that within the middle of the day. And I think that's another thing, is that you can definitely take self-care into the habit stack. And like, that's a really, it's a really healthy way, I think, to use your habit stack, is by time, putting in time for self-care. If that's, taking a bath, or, meditating, I think is good self-care, or, sometimes just like putting on a face mask, I think that that's another really good one.
And self-care, right? I struggle with the term self-care, because I think it's been stolen, and that too many people see it as, well, I'm gonna pay and get a manicure, or I'm gonna treat myself to a little, a little this or a little that.
Almost becoming another dopamine hit item instead of just taking care of yourself.
It is, and in some ways, self-care is sometimes doing the things that sometimes we don't particularly want to do, right? Self-care I hate flossing my teeth. I will confess, but you know what? It's self-care because I'm really fond of my teeth, and I plan on living for a really long time.
Yeah.
So self-care for me is actually sometimes doing the thing that I, know that are the things that are good for me, but that are not basically those classic huge dopamine hits. But you know what? I'm really proud that part of my habit stack at night is I'm going to wash my face and take off my makeup and put on my fancy schmancy moisturizer, and I floss my stupid teeth.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of funny that during COVID, because I used to work in an office every day, and I used to get up and get dressed and put my contacts in and put on a full face of makeup and and then, I would always shower in the morning before all that, and then I would come home at night and I would take off that full face of makeup and, wash wash and brush and all this stuff. And then COVID hit, and now I'm at home all day. Right. And I'm probably in my PJs more often than I'd like to admit during the day while I'm working, because, if I'm at home and the camera's not on the meeting, why do I need to worry about what I look like? And so I feel like even just like the simple things like brushing my teeth at night, washing my face at night, just went by the wayside, because I didn't put on makeup today. Like, I don't have to worry about that. But the reality is it's still good self-care, quote unquote. I'm making air quotes right now. Sorry. But so, like adding that stuff back into, the habit stack. I mean, I have taking my vitamins is on my evening habit stack. So, I just remember to take my vitamins, and I never forget, because it's a checkbox I have to check off. So.
And another important habit stack item, if you haven't considered automating it, is I try to 3 times a week at night do a BLE module. I can go back and do ones I've done before, or something that is a self-development, self-exploration, emotional personal growth thing, right? So I listen to or read or consume some type of information, or do some kind of an activity toward furthering my emotional health. And like I said, sometimes that's just listening to a couple modules, or like I'm finishing the maintenance 3 module now, because I hadn't done that one yet, and then I'm going to go back and do the new boot camp one, because I haven't. I did the original one a long time ago. But then even going back and doing other modules, there's so much content in there, and I'm paying for it, so use it, right? It's there for you, and I think it just keeps me in the mindset that this is something I'm doing long term. That you're never done. Healing yourself and growing emotionally. And I've done a lot of work and have come a long way, but there's always ways that we can continue to grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally. So
and I don't think that it's a requirement, obviously, to be a member of the BLE program to do self-improvement. And so there's a number of good resources out there as well. And talking about the resource that, we would definitely recommend if we're talking about habits and habit forming is the book Atomic Habits. So.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah. So Robin, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, or anything to comment.
The thing that I love about it is that it talks about the science of building habits. And, I'm just a big science nerd. And if you can help me understand why my brain does something, or why doing XYZ is the way to build a habit. And a lot of what they talk about in the book Atomic Habits is really habit stacking,
right,
and how to link those habits. And so I would just highly recommend that if you're looking for kind of a personal growth book that's not super heavy. I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments on habits?
I think just to reemphasize, I think what you said earlier, which is if you're just starting BLE, don't worry about having to add habit stacks yet. It's a lot.
Right.
One thing at a time, like you'll be ready when you're ready, but do know that if you invest in yourself by taking some time to create habits that will benefit you, that you know are going to make you feel good, it'll help your program and it'll help you in general.
Yeah.
But don't worry if you're not ready.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to do one thing at a time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just making the habit of eating healthier food is a huge habit
It's a
change.
huge
So
habit.
that's the first thing you've got to do.
Yeah, and I think that also finding the way to track those habits is got to be personalized too, because I think
Oh, yeah.
BLE has a nightly checklist, and I just am never going to print off a piece of paper, guys. I'm never going to print off a piece of paper, and I'm never going to use it. Like, I'm just not going to. So, me myself, I went out and I found a habit tracking app. It's called Fabulous, and it's graphically I just like the way it looks because it's pretty, but. I mean, is it the best app in the world? No, but it's free. And so I think that's really, you just got to find a habit tracking app if you want to use an app rather than a piece of paper. But hey, if you want to use a piece of paper, use a piece of paper too. Like, write it in your journal, whatever, whatever works for you. There is a nightly checklist that's editable in the BLE community. It's one of the resources out there. And like I said, it is editable. So if you want to, pull it down onto your computer and then edit it to make it personalized for you, you can do that too. And then you can print it out. You can print 1,000 copies out and you can have one, for the rest of your life. So
The thing that I like about the habit tracking apps, and I think I've used one called Duuun, I think there's Streaks, there's a bunch of them. With most of those habit tracking apps, even the free ones, they remind you. You can set up reminders, right? You can also set up the frequency of how frequently do you want to do that habit. Is that a 3-time-a-day habit? Is that a twice-a-week habit?
Right.
And so for me, having the little reminders as just a cue of like, bing, hey, did you do your meditation today?
Yeah.
Whoops, you know what? I didn't. Let me go ahead and do that right now.
Yeah.
That I found really helpful, especially when you're starting to get used to adding those habits in at the beginning. I think that's a really nice piece to have. And yeah, again, I'm all about free, so I like the free.
I just want to echo what Bonnie said about, be gentle with yourself, especially at the beginning of the program. Making any major change is hard. I mean, it's just hard to do anything. And I think that's part of the reason why, at the beginning of this program, they say don't exercise, because you can't change more, changing more than one major life thing at a time is, near impossible and will unfortunately probably lead to failure more often than not. And so the reality is that, I think the best advice I could give personally, my advice is that until you're ready for it, don't push it. It's not, you're not failing if you don't have a, excellent habit stack routine day one. That doesn't make you a failure at BLE. It actually probably could make you very successful at BLE because you're taking the time to add stuff in as it makes sense for you and as your automaticity comes into play and is developed. So think about it like, strengthening muscles. So
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, that was our podcast for today, and thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next time.